Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this committee today. My name is Mark Blumberg. I'm a lawyer at a small law firm in Toronto that has 10 lawyers, and we focus exclusively on nonprofits, charities, and philanthropy. I'm going to talk today about the scandal involving the Canada Student Service Grant and We Charity, and that it isn't unfortunately over. These comments are a point in time, and the saga is continuing. There's a lot we don't know about the scandal. Having various committees in the past looking at of the House of Commons looking at these issues was helpful, but it was quite inefficient. Also, there's a lot of complicated issues at play, such as charity compliance issues, and I would say that, in my opinion, these committees are not really ideally equipped to deal with these types of investigations. That's why I've suggested in the past that a public inquiry be launched into this particular scandal, and then the various committees can go back to focusing on their regular work in these difficult times dealing with COVID. There are essentially three somewhat interlinked components to the scandal. First, the design of the CSSG program itself was problematic. The federal government decision-making process, and I'm not an expert in conflicts of interest in that, but it appears to be conflicted. And then many concerns about the choice of We Charity to deliver this particular program. This is not just about a $543 million program. It's about a federal government during COVID, when the charity sector was under tremendous strain and continues to be, giving almost nothing to the charity sector, certainly almost nothing when one thinks of the tens of billions being spent. And then the government proposes to give $543 million to one organization who has a checkered past. So it's, in a sense, the contrast of the way in which this one charity was treated with a $543 million grant compared to how the federal government dealt with the rest of the charity sector, which has largely been silence and providing absolutely nothing to most charities. So that's one major facet. Secondly, another big issue is, was there tremendous influence by Finance Department on Employment and Social Development Canada, ESDC? Or did ESDC think that We Charity was a great charity and uniquely able to deliver this program? If it's the first, the finance pressure, then Mr. Morneau has resigned and perhaps that influence will stop. And that's a particular circumstance. If it's the second, the possibility that ESDC actually thought We Charity was a great charity, then it's a much more serious issue. It would really call into question the capacity of ESDC to undertake due diligence on charities and their decision-making. If this is really an ESDC decision, as many Liberals have claimed, then significant changes may be needed at ESDC, or tens of billions of funds could be equally poorly allocated over the next few years. Assuming finance was not pressuring ESDC, how ESDC could have gotten this so wrong is mind-boggling. That is one of the many reasons why I think a public inquiry into the CSSG We scandal is worthwhile. There are many compliance issues that have been raised by this whole We Charity scandal, including but not limited to using multiple corporations, some of which are Canadian registered charities, and the lack of clarity between the different corporations. Treatment of employees during employment and post-employment, reporting and transparency, lobbying of government officials without registering, partisan activities, social enterprise and business activities, government grant-making processes and fairness, owning large amounts of real estate, corporate sponsorship and access to children, compensation of founders, and governance and having founders involved in a charity for a long period of time. These are some of the many sort of issues that have been floating around over the last few months. Trust in the charity sector is vital. Public trust is like oxygen. You only really notice a problem when it's in short supply. Will Canadians trust charities less because of the We Charity scandal? Will they think the problems of We Charity are reflective of the broader charity sector and trust the sector less? We Charity was quite a unique organization, but it wasn't completely unique. Therefore, their indiscretions may affect the reputation of the charity sector. It may take years to see the full impact of the scandal, but we're already seeing significant declines in public trust of charities, despite huge gains in public trust at the beginning of COVID in response to the heroic work by some in the charity sector to respond to COVID. The biggest concern for the charity sector is that the We Charity scandal will hurt the reputation of the sector, undercut donations, and government funding. Transparency is vital for maintaining public trust. We're concerned that there's not nearly enough transparency in the Canadian charity sector. Over the last 10 years, the CRA, for various reasons, including maybe pressure from certain special interest groups, has actually been reducing the amount of information they publicly collect and provide about charities. Other countries, meanwhile, have been increasing transparency on charities. Having inadequate transparency on registered charities in Canada meant that there's not enough information on We Charity available and very little on Me to We, which is the for-profit arm. It's hard to understand the full picture when you can only see half the story. I've submitted to the Finance Committee 10 recommendations on improving the regulation of charities in Canada. I'll just mention 3 ideas that I'm going to bring to this committee, which is currently that if the CRA is aware that a charity is involved in very problematic activities, they're not allowed to disclose that information, not to the public or even to members of Parliament. The federal government should amend the confidentiality provisions of the Income Tax Act, which is Section 241, in order to allow the CRA at its discretion to disclose serious non-compliance of registered charities. Secondly, now with registered charities, there is some public information available from the public portion of the T3010. But when it comes to nonprofits, which is 80 to 100,000 organizations, the CRA discloses nothing, and for many groups, there's very little information available on them. We have proposed that already many nonprofits, and certainly the bigger ones, file a form called the T1044 every year. They're filed with CRA, they're inputted into a database by CRA. These should be disclosed. It's no extra effort or burden for either those nonprofits or CRA, but it would give us at least a little bit of an idea about that other part of the nonprofit sector. We've also proposed the federal government provide funding to the Charities Directorate to increase the amount of information collected and distributed on charities. Those are sort of 3 proposals out of the 10 that we had made. We essentially want a balanced regulatory approach to charities, which is appropriate to the importance and tax subsidy provided to charities. The We Charity scandal raised a number of very important questions about the regulation of registered charities. Either regulation of the charity sector will be enhanced, or the reputation of the sector and public trust in the sector may decline. I've publicly provided detailed comments on... Yeah.
I gave you an extra 30 seconds, but I'll have to go out there. And then if there's any other point you want to make, you could certainly make it as we get into the question period.
Now to Mr. Blumberg. I was interested, you said you studied the Kielburger organization for some time, and you believe you've figured you've got about 20% picture of how they operate. I've been on committees for 16 years, and I haven't found anything almost as difficult as this. So they have multiple corporate entities, shell corporations, organizations in Canada, the United States, and Kenya, and it's all focused on the charity work they say they do, Kenya and the children. Here's a company, Kiel Initiatives Ltd. We found it in their filings. They sold water in Kenya under the Me to We label. We later found that they were banned in Kenya, and my daughter, who worked in Africa, said, "You got to really do something, Dad, to get banned in Kenya." So the Kielburger Group were running this water company, and yet still being a charity. Is that something that would raise alarm bells with these multiple holdings, real estate organizations, side deals that they're running?
Well, yes, absolutely. It's not that charities can't do business. The charities do lots of business. If you ever go to a hospital and you park in the parking lot, that's a related business. It could be perfectly fine. What is unusual here is normally the charity owns the business. The business isn't owned by 1 or 2 other people, and the charity is providing certain recruitment or volunteers or other things to the business owned by someone else. So that's really the anomaly. It's not, I'm all for charities doing business activities. I just want it when the charity does a business activity, that if there's a profit or if there's an appreciation in the value of the business, which is mainly because many businesses don't have a profit, but there's appreciation in the value, I want that to go to the charity.
Well, so, that's an important question, because we don't know how the finances work. We've been told that 50% goes to the charity, then it was 80%, then it's 100%, but we don't get to see. Now, in terms of their structure, the Kielburger brothers, like we learned, Mark Kielburger did all the main negotiating for the big stars to come to the We events. Craig Kielburger did all the negotiating with the government on the contract with the We scandal. They said that they didn't need to register to lobby because they're just volunteers. and yet they had the power as volunteers to fire their board of directors when the board of directors of their charity asked for financial documents. Is that something that raises serious alarm bells? Like the fact that this sort of founder status, like how they operate, I haven't seen anything quite like it.
No, and this particular, and certainly the scope of it, I haven't either seen anything like it. But what I would say is, from a legal point of view, it may be legally appropriate that the two of them were not registered under the Lobbyist Registration Act. But what I would say is that we organization, we charity, there's no question in my mind that they should have been. And even in their testimony, they said that it wasn't like a substantial part of what they're doing, but that's not the test. The test is it 1/5 of an FTE, basically, even on a monthly basis working on it? There's no question. And when they said it took a handful of people to, basically do this $543 million proposal, I mean, certainly other groups, it takes them 6 months and, hundreds and hundreds, thousands sometimes of hours to put this stuff together. So I think that there's no question they should have been. Whether exactly who should have been registered is one issue. The other thing that's going to be a big issue for the commissioner is that if there isn't any impact, basically they just get to say, well, we filed these 65 plus reports and there's no other consequences. It's going to completely undercut the whole lobbyist registry system for charities. I think a lot of charities are going to say, we can pretty much meet with the government 60 times before anyone's going to, really say anything. And then if we get caught, we'll just file these things. So, I mean,
well,
I've heard
of, just in my final seconds, I know a lot of charities that registered to lobby, and they're going pretty much for contracts that are worth peanuts compared to what the Kielburgers were going for. That Craig could write directly to Bill Morneau and say, hey, Bill, how's your family? And ask for $12 million and get it 11 days later. That seems to me to be a pretty staggering insider track that I haven't seen anywhere else. Is that common in the charity circuit?
Oh, definitely not. Like I said, it can take years to get government money.
That's all I can give you, Mr. Bloom.